What's going on, everybody? Week 5 had so much going on. Questionable official calls, insane upsets, awesome comebacks, and true heartbreak. And then we have a coach getting fired. We have questions regarding roughing the passer. Lots taking place this week, and we have the coverage starting for you right now. Alex Ranniello, as always, is here. What's up, Alex?
Going on, man? Happy to be back.
Great to see you. And friend of the show, usually does NBA with us, and now he's switching gears to show his NFL knowledge. Desmond Price of Independent Thought is here. What's going on?
Happy to be here, man. Thanks for the invite. Let's talk some football.
All right. And Brian McKeon has some last-minute work stuff. Apparently, bridges are literally falling down, so we hopefully that is okay over there. But let's get to it, gentlemen. So, got to do with some bias here. Let's talk about the London game as a Giants fan. The 4-1 Giants win a thriller, absolute thriller, with Daniel Jones missing 4 of his top 5 receivers. He's still able to pull off a huge upset, with the Giants only giving up 2 points to Green Bay in the second half, holding them together. And Brian Daboll and his coaching staff's magical run continues. Giants upset the Packers in London on a Sunday morning. So, one thing with Desmond, we have an Eagles fan, NFC East rival here. And as I'm proclaiming my enthusiasm, I see you shaking your head. First things first, it's fair to say with this 4-1 team, people think they are the worst 4-1 team. They're winning on flukes. With your body language, Desmond, do you think that was the case after this win in London against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, who do have a pretty stellar defense, even though they have many questions on the offensive side? What do you say about this being an Eagles fan and another NFC East rival?
I'm going to start off by saying this, as an Eagles fan, watching Washington's football team, and they changed their name recently, the Giants and the Cowboys, for decades now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always thought of Washington as being like the annoying little brother. You kind of just gotta like swat them away. Occasionally They get the best idea, but they're just kind of like annoying. The Cowboys I hate, but the Giants are kind of like it's a rivalry in the sense where there's like a respect there. Like I respect the Giants.
Absolutely.
I don't like
feel
the Giants, but
way.
I respect them.
I hate the absolute Cowboys with a fiery passion. Eagles, they're of course, there have been heartbreaking losses, especially in some tough playoff losses early on, years and stuff. But, there's nothing to really be enraged about. It's just so,
Yeah, I mean, the Giants, it's a respect thing. I don't like them. I don't root for them. I'm always happy when they lose just for the divisional sake of it. I'm just like, because whenever another team in your division loses, that's good for your team. You know what I mean?
Of course.
But like, I don't hate the Giants. With that being said, I've thought for a long time now that Daniel Jones was not the answer at quarterback. And I still feel that way, but I think it's a testament to this new coaching staff that they're finding ways to put him in a position where the team can win despite the fact that he's not a great quarterback. I still think you're going to have to get a different quarterback eventually, but
yes,
as of right now, you're finding ways to win that don't include an elite passing attack. And I don't know if the Giants are a sneaky playoff team. I've seen the Giants before start off a season, go 6-2, and then end 2-6. So I mean, like it's the Giants. So like, let's talk about this again in like November. But I think they got something real here. I think the game in London was not just a combination of the Giants overperforming, but the Packers, I just don't think they're as great as we're making them out to be this year. I think they're I wouldn't put them in the top of the NFC. I'd say maybe they're 5th or 6th. And I think the Giants took advantage of a team that wasn't taking them seriously, and the Packers paid for it.
That is a fair criticism over there with the Packers, taking advantage of a team that's still finding issues. Though they could definitely play well on defense, their offense is clearly having problems. And I am an admitted big fan of Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback, but clearly with especially after this week, Allen Lazard isn't exactly Devontae Adams. Though I like Dobbs, but he's not Jordy Nelson yet. And Robert Tonyan seems to be a disappointing tight end. even though they have been doing okay protecting Aaron Rodgers, it clearly sees that, especially now as we approach, I think week 6 is ultimately the week where we separate the true competitors to who's already going to think about a draft pick. And I won't say that yet with the Packers, especially in their division with a sneaky Vikings team that might take it over. But it's definitely apparent now, especially after seeing them against my team, that the Packers really might have some issues moving forward.
Well, I think that there's a lot of good things, like you guys both said, that the Giants, whether we think they're a playoff team or a real team or not, that there's a handful of things that they can really lean on, which we already know, which is the pass rush late in game and the play calling of Daboll in order to get a really rock solid and sturdy run game going throughout the game. So if you have the run game going and you're able to stop guys on third down with your pass rush, you have a lot of things clicking where you can make Daniel Jones' life a lot easier. But I'm just confused what's going on with the Packers, because like you said, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't need to throw the ball 40 times to win, they should have been running downhill on this team.
Yes, the run game is the clear specialty.
Yeah, and it seems like they got away from the run. They didn't even crack 100 yards with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. So I think that if they continue to keep force feeding the receivers that aren't ready, or at least the scheme is not there for the passing game, I think that this team's going to continue to struggle with their identity on offense.
Yes, and that and the opposite with the Giants, as Desmond made some points too. I think the Brian Daboll coaching staff really shows, especially in the game of football, coaching really does matter. If you have the right coaching staff making the right play calling, putting the right players in the right position, football, especially in the NFL, is the one sport that you can really succeed in and get a few more wins. It definitely matters.
It matters more in football than in any other sport.
Yeah.
I mean, you could make arguments that it doesn't really matter that much in basketball. It doesn't matter that much in baseball. I don't think it matters at all in hockey, personally.
Mm-hmm.
Football has too many dependent parts. That's why.
Yeah, I think in football it's crucial. I mean, we see it all the time. How many times like a bad coach just craters a team, and a good coach can elevate a mediocre team to a higher level.
Right, right. And especially with this Giants team now, and just a few more thoughts on there before we move on. Daniel Jones, still you still have the jury out on him, but clearly his mobility is his greatest strength. And he does have his accuracy can actually be highlighted at times as well. And the real test going against a Baltimore team who is very, very solid in their defense, if they can somehow pull this win off at home against them, then you could feel more comfortable that they can make a push for a wild card spot. For now, still up in the air, but you cannot be more happy if you're a Giants fan today and how they're looking, and a real test against Baltimore this upcoming week. So Good stuff there. And focusing on the other New York team.
Oh, I have a quick question before we move on. Are we actually picking the week 6 games at the end of this?
So you're picking them when we do the upsets, whimpers, and thrillers. You explain there and then pick who you think would win after that, whether you're picking off the spread, money line, and stuff.
We usually pick one game for each of the 3 categories, pretty much.
Exactly.
Got it.
So this, which will also bleed into the story of the AFC East now, the other New York team, the New York Jets, with a huge win against Miami. I mean, putting 40 points against them, while Miami's had quite a couple of weeks, it's fair to say. Sauce Gardner, who's looking like the best pick out of the first round for them after 5 weeks, literally knocks out Teddy Bridgewater out of the game. Skylar Thompson comes in. He truly shits the bed and plays pretty terribly, not making very good decisions, not keeping the game competitive at all. And especially after a stellar preseason, was not a good day for the third string quarterback. And I really think the Dolphins are in some real trouble now. The Jets defense really kills it. And now the question for them, can they make a playoff push after another good game with a returning Zach Wilson? So let me ask with this story, what's the bigger story? The Dolphins now having legitimate issues with their injuries, or is it more of, wow, the Jets are pretty good? Where do you see this going between those two franchises?
You want me to go first?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
who's ever there?
Honestly, I gotta answer neither.
Mm.
Here's my thing. Let me talk about the Dolphins first. I think that when I look at the game against the Jets, first thing to point out is that going into the fourth quarter, that game was 19-17.
Yes.
So you had the Jets scoring 21 points in the fourth quarter. Now, for all the issues that the Dolphins were supposed to have on offense, like the issues that we talk about with the Dolphins are just on their offense. We've had them as being a decent defensive unit all year. I mean, they kept that game against Cincinnati pretty competitive. They held the Bills to 19 points down in Florida. They did have a bad game against the Ravens, but they also had a good game in the first game of the year against the Patriots. So the Dolphins defense has been solid this whole year. So, I mean, I think that when Tua comes back or when Teddy comes back, I think that the offense will stabilize. I think the Dolphins have a solid chance of being like the 6 or 7 seed in the AFC this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Jets have kind of gotten some favorable matchups so far and might have been getting a little bit of a lucky results, beating a banged up Pittsburgh team who just got smoked by Buffalo, taking advantage of the Browns forgetting to cover receivers who are running down the field, as you do, and giving up 14 points in the last minute of a half of that game against the Browns. And yeah, I guess, we're talking about this blowout against the Jets. I don't know. I guess the Dolphins rather. I need to see more from the Jets. I can't I can't buy any stock in them just yet until I see them against some higher quality opponents right now. So I think there's just too much uncertainty with really saying what the Jets are going to be. But I do like Breece Hall. That guy is the truth. You have a real running back there.
Real dual threat, like a Debo, their version of Debo Samuel for sure.
I like Breece Hall.
Yeah, he's like a super athletic back. He can really extend plays. I totally agree. I mean, the jury's still out on Jets because I'm not really I'm gonna give Miami more of a mulligan on this week because of obviously the backup issue concerns with Tua, and they're it seems as of yesterday that they're evaluating him every 12 to 24 hours. So we'll see. I still think he's going to be ruled out against Minnesota next week. That's just my opinion, but yeah, Miami's in a world of hurt for at least for the next foreseeable few weeks. I think that we love what they can do on offense, but they don't really have a defense to rely on to keep these games close when their offense is down or struggling. So I think that they're going to have a few more games to hit the skids, and I think ultimately by the end of the year they will still be kind of in contention for that 7th seed. But no, I mean, there's a lot, similar to the Giants, but at a smaller scale. I think there's a lot of great things to like about this Jets team. I think this defense is electrifying. They're all over the field in the secondary, starting with Gardner. And I really like their front four as well. I think they can get pressure. They make quarterbacks uncomfortable, and I like their formula for taking weight off of Zach Wilson's shoulders, because yesterday, 14 of 21, it was like nothing special, but they didn't ask him to do more than he needed to do. And the evidence of that bears out in the statistics. He only, had 1 interception. No, he had no interceptions. He played a clean game. So I think if they could reduce down the penalties a little bit, they had 105 yards in penalties. I think that may be an issue, but 5 of 11 on 3rd down just proves to me that he's improving by week, and that they're taking a lot of this weight off his shoulders.
Yeah, the Jets are 3-0 since he started taking receipts. So, I mean, I'm trying to figure out, the Jets are at the Packers this week. If the Jets win this game, I'm buying Jet stock.
Yeah,
and I'm dumping Green Bay stock.
Yeah. So, I mean, because the Packers coming off that loss in London, they're looking to have a big bounce back game. So if you can blunt that bounce back game and get a win in Lambeau, yeah, I'll buy Jet stock. But yeah, show me this Sunday.
Yeah, and I will stand corrected on Aaron Rodgers if he can't beat the Jets this week with my confidence before there. But it's going to be an interesting game to see. And I really thought the coaching was a weakness for this team, but it seems to have been really improved since we had Quentin Williams screaming at the defensive line coach, whose name's escaping me. But hey, it makes a difference. Sometimes it takes a dramatic moment, and that clearly wasn't for them. So I don't know if you know this, Desmond, but Alex is a Las Vegas Raiders fan, and it's time for
Ooh.
him to go through it's time for him to go through some tough love as his camera comes off the minute I said that. But I'm sure he's there. So Sunday or Monday night, I should say, a classic game between two classic NFL franchises. Oof, a lot to take in. So first, refs play a role in this once again, I think. And there's a deeper question about that roughing the passer penalty. Raiders started off really hot. The Chiefs made the comeback and just another crushing loss. And I really thought in the fourth that they were going to make a comeback, but after seeing Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow literally run into each other, it was a done deal for there. 1-3. The Vegas Raiders are 1-3. The Chiefs improved to 4-1. Alex, I hate to do this to you again, but I have to. How are you feeling again after another tough loss for your team, especially one that was so topsy-turvy?
If this was anything beyond week 5 and it was like, week 6 and it was like week 10 or 11, I would feel like shit. But I think I'm like the most overconfident, overinflated 1-5, 1-4 team of all time. I think it's very easy to just resort to, crying myself to sleep and, hanging on every, penalty and every missed opportunity from last night. And trust me, I thought about it, but I am so, tremendously encouraged by this team. I thought the game was super exciting, super intense, and I loved a lot of the game. I thought that they came out with a game plan to attack them, and you could tell by the first, 4th and 1 where he threw a bomb 58 yards to Devontae to the house. I thought they really are starting to solidify their connection between the two of them, the way they run routes, and it's going to take a whole season to really get it perfected, but they looked a lot better. And I thought that they came out with purpose. Jacobs ran all over them all night. He had almost 150 yards. I thought the defense between Crosby and Chandler Jones getting home 3 times last night showed that they made Mahomes uncomfortable in the first half. I thought they were tremendous. But again, the part that really just has me falling apart at the seams is 100 yards in penalties just from Vegas. The defensive holding on 4th down that extended that drive in the 3rd quarter was really a backbreaker, because when the defense finally showed up for them and broke that offensive momentum, it gave them another set of downs, and they gave Kelsey a 4th touchdown, and it just felt like it broke the back of the Raiders in that second half when they felt like the tides were turning. I think going for 2, obviously, you could go with the analytics and say that, and this.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
But tell you what, and this firsthand, Matt, from watching baseball, analytics gets you fired in baseball, and I feel like we're kind of going down the same road with the NFL. If you were to kick that extra point, Kansas City gets the ball back with maybe a minute, a little bit less. But at the very least, if you go into overtime, you rely on your defense to hold up against Kansas City, or you get the ball first and you trust that offense with McDaniels to get down the field. And I just think that they had a better shot to win it in overtime, if you're going to be honest, between the 3 of us. I thought that, again, we're 1-4. This is an excruciating loss, particularly because it's a divisional game, but I'm yet reluctant to say that our season's over. So.
All right, I'm going to start with that 2-point decision, because this really isn't, what I'm about to say really isn't so much just about the Raiders as it is as I'm seeing this trend across the NFL. It's not a binary where you need to either never go for it on 4th down or always go for it on 4th down. It's a situational thing. Yeah. The Eagles go for it on 4th down a lot. And I think that most of the time that we're doing it, it's appropriate. I think we have a really good sense for when to go for it on 4th down. There's been a couple of times where I kind of shook my head and it worked out for us. But, my point is I think sometimes certain coaches overthink this. We see this with John Harbaugh a lot in Baltimore.
Brandon Stanley the coach, in LA.
Yeah, the coach with the Chargers in LA. And last night I'm thinking it's 30-29. Why wouldn't you just kick the field goal and trust your defense? Because we play this out, right? You didn't do that. Then the Chiefs got the ball back. They couldn't even get a field goal. At that point, you would have been tied and you had the ball driving down the field, only needing to get that field goal. I mean, I think in the worst case scenarios, you just go into overtime, but instead of that 1 point Chiefs win, I just think that too often these coaches are out thinking the scenario. They're looking too much at statistics and not like just feeling the game out. You gotta trust your team sometimes. But with the Raiders, I mean, I don't have the stat in front of me, but I feel like haven't they lost like all 4 of their games by 1 possession? Like it's like by 1 touchdown or less. Like that is.
They're all been very close games, and I'm sure
crushing.
Alex can confirm that. And
yeah. So, I mean, like that tells me that your team is great, but you're just having execution problems on some level that's preventing you from winning these close games. I mean, obviously with the defense, man, like we're seeing this time and time again, you've blown 2 17-point leads now between this game with the Cardinals. Like, holy shit, bro. You gotta figure something out on defense with the Raiders. I mean, especially you let their number 1 target get 4 different touchdowns. How do you let Kelsey get 4 touchdowns last night?
it only worked out for me on fantasy.
I mean, like you gotta take him away. Like I want Smith-Schuster to get 4 touchdowns or let Hardman get 4. You can't let Kelsey get 4 touchdowns. Well, that's embarrassing.
And I think he only did it with 25 receiving yards too.
Yeah, 7 receptions for 25 receiving yards, 4 T's. I'm like, who else is Mahomes throwing it to in the red zone? Come on now.
It's embarrassing because every time they went down, whether it was the first possession or the 4th possession, you knew that he was number 1 target in the red zone. And it's unexcusable for that defense in the red zone to be that bad. It's laughable.
It is, but on the positive note, I'm very encouraged by the Raiders offense. I think Carr's looked better this year. I think that they're still trying to figure out how to balance Renfro, Waller, and Adams, but I feel like it's kind of gelling. I was worried about how Jacobs was going to fit into this new scheme, but he was tearing it up last night. I mean, I don't think you're that many kind of like, I wouldn't even say pieces. I think you just got to just figure out a better game plan. I think this really comes down to coaching. I put this at Josh McDaniels.
It's situational. It's totally situational. And I thought that I think he inadvertently like won his job, but he also somehow kind of lost it last night because he showed me so many great things of what this offense could be and where it's at. And you could also still make the argument that this team could be 4-1 or 5-0. Just by games all being decided by less than 7 points. Yeah, but I think ultimately what's going to be the overwhelming, final factor on this team is how far it goes is that secondary has to just be cleaned up. You can't have it's inexcusable to not have a play call that's adjusted to win these games outright, but also not have a secondary that you can lean on because it's excruciating for that defense to be trudged out there night after night and have stellar play on the front 4 with Crosby and Chandler Jones and have nothing from your back end. Now, I do like Yaxin and I do like Nate Hobbs, but they don't really play a lot of, one-on-one coverage on the corners. They're more of kind of zone guys, and Perriman's like he kind of takes care of the center of the field. But as you noticed, Perriman was basically neutralized because they didn't go to Kelsey all game. They only went to him in the red zone.
Yeah, and I want to make just one point about the Chiefs before we move on from this game. I think the Chiefs offense actually looks more, I wouldn't say dangerous, but more dynamic without Tyreek Hill. And I think also because the running game the running backs between like Pacheco and McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think that they are just a lot more aggressive than they have in years past. But what I believe, I'm making a random pick right now. I think that when the Bills roll into town this week, I think they're going to smack them. I just think that the Chiefs defense is a liability, and I think it's going to prevent them from being able to compete with the Bills.
Well, and they have a chip on their shoulder too, because they're trying to get revenge for last year's playoffs too.
The last 2 years playoffs.
Yeah, last 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This Chiefs team could easily be 3-2, especially against teams that they've had some weird wins and kept it close themselves. So if they can really stay competitive against this Bills team, which is getting more healthy, that'll definitely be a solid sign. And I was just looking up quickly, Alex, to make you feel better. We had a 76 Steelers team who started 1-4 and made it to the AFC title game, but lost to your Raiders. But there's one example.
Had to go back to the 70s though.
It's true. When they did have a smaller schedule, when they had a shorter schedule.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 14 games.
Well, I'm looking at the Kyle Orton led Broncos who started 1-4 and made a playoff run.
Broncos have had some
and that
terrible quarterbacks over the years.
And that was when Tebow actually got his playoff win.
Oh yeah.
So it's happened.
I'm not ready to write this team off because of the time of the year that we're in. We're still figuring out who is who, but I'm highly encouraged by what I see from like 80% of this team. They really need to like tighten up the screws with the offensive play call, and that secondary is just so trash.
I like the Raiders' chances getting at least. I think they're going to do well in their division. I actually like them over the Chargers when they play in Vegas, and I think you're going to win both those games against the Broncos.
All right.
Yeah, the Broncos are trash.
Perfect transition, because that was the very next game we have on this agenda. Broncos and Colts on Thursday night. And I'm just going to ask one question. Was that the worst Thursday night football game you've ever seen, with no offense whatsoever, not barely any exciting plays, somehow went into overtime, a game of field goal kickers, and ultimately Matt Ryan needed that win for some chivalry. But a lot of people are starting to write off Russell Wilson as, I mean, I don't know if it's too early to say a bust, but he's looking really bad right now. And they're on prime time again coming up this week. I mean, who came off worse, the team who won or the team who lost in this terrible Thursday night game?
The Colts are so lucky that they won that game, because we should be talking about them equally in this conversation, but it's impossible to talk about them equally when you think about the Broncos, because it's not just they look this bad. It's when you look at what they traded to get Russell Wilson and then how much money they gave him. I mean, that might just be, and I've had to question this because I'm thinking about basketball too. That might be the worst trade in professional sports history, the way that it's looking right now. I'm also thinking about the time that the Nets traded for the aging like Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett.
Yeah.
And gave like a bunch of picks to the Celtics. The Celtics just straight robbed the Nets. I'm also thinking about the time where just this year, where somehow Danny Ainge once again fleeced the Timberwolves into giving up like 5 picks for Rudy Gobert. Just
how about the trade the Lakers Memphis? That was bad too.
Right.
And those picks led to Jaylen Brown and Marcus. Yep. And all that. So,
oh my God. It's just, but yeah, I'm thinking about this Russell Wilson trade. They gave up so much to get him, and he looks terrible. If there's no way around, like people want to say like, oh, it's Hackett and his play calling. Yeah, that's a factor, but just like, don't look at the analytics, just watch the game. Like you can see him. He is staring down receivers. Yeah. He's not going through his progressions. He's very inaccurate making his throws, like to whoever he's throwing it to. He's struggling with his deep ball, which was like his trademark thing in Seattle. And he just, like, honestly, legitimately, I think that he is playing on the same level as like a Mitchell Trubisky right now. Like, it's just not good enough. And for a guy who's won a Super Bowl, who wants to do all these commercials like Broncos country, let's ride. Like it is so bad. It's cringe, man. Like this whole situation is cringe. I feel for the Broncos fans. I know that like that city is kind of similar to Philly and New York. Like they take their sport seriously in Denver, and they're just getting flat out embarrassed. I mean, I just don't see it getting this much better. I mean, have the Broncos even scored more than 20 points this season?
I don't think so.
No, not yet. They haven't. And and then also just the coach, these questionable decisions Nathaniel Hackett's making. People really want to strangle that dude. Do you think it's that fair, or are we overreacting?
But you know what? That's even more excusable because he's a rookie coach.
Exactly.
But Wilson was supposed to be the guy steering the ship as soon as he got to Denver.
Right.
They sold the entire homestead for him. And he was making the claim simultaneously when he was in Seattle that he was a bigger piece of the pie than Pete Carroll was. So they were already putting their stakes betting on him to run the offense higher at a higher efficiency than he is now. So I understand like there should be, a more graceful transition with this team, and they should be putting up numbers and dialing up better plays and whatnot. I've just been so discouraged and depressed by watching Russell Wilson and this offense operate. I think that I watched the first half when it was like 6-6 or 6-3, and when I woke up, I was like, oh, Stephon Gilmore, player of the game. I'm like, oh, that's not good.
Yo,
with the quarter pick, it's like, oh, you guys got to be killing. You guys got to be kidding me. I think there's so much to be desired with both of these teams, and I think luckily for Indianapolis, they play in a crappy division, but they're just as bad behind them as well.
I want to say really quickly just two things. One, you guys gotta, if you're not already, you gotta follow that NFL memes page on Instagram because they had some killers. They had some killers after this game. But the Broncos, this is actually a great way to cycle this back to the beginning of this episode. We're talking about the Giants because the Broncos have a better defense than the Giants. They have a great defense. They have a running game that while like they don't have a back who's as good as Saquon Barkley, like their I know Javonte Williams got injured, but their two backs in combination are running very effectively. They have better receivers than the Giants do. Mm-hmm. And they're supposed to have the better quarterback and they're getting trounced. This is what they're like 1-4 right now. They're 2-3.
Yeah, 2-3.
They're 2-3. Like they're getting absolutely trounced on offense right now. And I think this is actually this is not just an indictment on Russell Wilson, but it is on the coach as well. I know, again, we're talking about a rookie coach, but like that's your difference in coaching once again. Like Daboll over in New York is able to take a worse roster and get better results than this team that should be contending to be in the upper echelon of the AFC, and they look god awful. Like there's your coaching difference on top of Russell Wilson doing all the terrible things he's doing.
And so many turnovers too. If Melvin Gordon would just hold on to the ball, you're talking about the comparison with like Daniel Jones, who's been able to lessen his turnovers, but Melvin Gordon now is transitioning to that, and it's just a mess. It was a real mess. And like I said, Broncos are again on prime time, playing on Monday night. And if Russell Wilson doesn't want to be the butt of jokes, he's going to have a good game this week, and we'll ultimately see if that is the case.
They're lucky they're facing a Chargers team who's like just riddled with injuries. I mean, between like Keenan Allen having that hamstring issue, their quarterback dealing with like cartilage issues. I mean, I think Bosa's battling an injury on the defensive end. It's just, they're like the Chargers should blow this team out if healthy.
If healthy. And that was another great transition for the next team I have. So we have here Chargers and Browns keeping it close, very close. Jacoby Brissett throws a very bad interception in the end zone in the fourth. Browns miss a game-winning field goal. Austin and Browns just keep being Browns, ironically. And then we have some other things to point out, like Austin Eckler has another big game to make up for his lost time. But we have questionable play calling again with the Chargers at the end of the fourth, such as going in for 4th and 2 on their own 50, not going for that field goal. Ultimately, it worked out because the Browns missed their opportunity, but this easily could have slipped, and the Browns lose another close game that, with better decision-making moments from their coach, could have led to possibly a winning record at this point. So, as you mentioned, Chargers have some injury issues, but Browns seem to really learn how to lose this season. Like, what do we take out of that?
You know what? This is actually a 2-3 team that I'm just not that worried about. I think that the story of like the Browns being the Browns, I feel like it's been changing over the last few years. I think they've gotten some new players in there that are kind of reversing the culture a little bit. I know that the results still look the same, but watching these games, I watched a lot of the Browns Panthers game because I was interested in seeing if how Mayfield was going to do with that. I watched the Browns Jets game, and the Steelers game was a primetime game. And I watched a lot of this Chargers game against the Browns this past week, and they look good. Like, I feel like they're still like messing
Especially
up in some key moments. But yeah, Chubb is amazing. Like, who wouldn't want him on their team? I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
And having also the combo with him and Kareem Hunt, Jacoby Brissett, like in my opinion, has been the best backup QB in football right now over Cooper Rush. And I think that he's done great being asked to fill in. I mean, the Browns got some issues on defense for sure, but I mean, I would still be optimistic. I mean, they're barely losing some of these games, and Jacoby's been pretty consistent, like with handling the ball this season. So that late pick, I don't really put too much on that against him. I think that the Browns are going to be doing all right this season. I actually think they still got a chance to make the playoffs, and I think they're just like one or two bad decisions each game from actually being 5-0 right now.
Yeah, no, I've been pleasantly surprised because when we originally made our preseason picks, Desmond, we factored in the fact that there was going to be an 11-game suspension coming down the pipe for Deshaun. But I've been, positively, surprised by this team and their, ability to gel and lean on the offense and the run game, because the one thing we also know too is that this defense really hasn't, has had some concerns with, with Myles Garrett being out and,
Right.
Having issues with their secondary as well. I think that there's a lot to be desired there too, but it feels like Stefanski really has he has a really a good handle on this offense, and leaning on Chubb and Kareem Hunt to really guide Brissett late in these games. And I think that even if they're blowing these games late, I'm pleasantly surprised by how they're able to keep the offense clicking and gelling and stay in these high stakes games with teams that they normally wouldn't really be there with down the stretch without Deshaun Watson. So I think the infrastructure is sound, it's sturdy, it's there. And I think that when Deshaun does come back, he's going to be inheriting a lot better of a roster than he initially thought.
Yeah, I mean, there are 3 losses where they lost by 3, they lost by 2, and they lost by 1. So I mean, like that's amazing. I mean, that's actually even more ridiculous than the Raiders, no offense. But like just, I mean, like even when you're losing, you're keeping it super competitive. No, I think the Browns have had some bad luck, but I think they got a great foundation here.
Yeah, it's tough, and it's tough too because Eckler really causes a lot of defenses issues, especially with the Chargers when that Herbert has the arm that he has and he's got weapons all over the place. So I think that it is hard to kind of game plan and scheme to slow down Eckler, but it'll be interesting to see how they play the rest of the season and adjust for some of these different types of offenses.
Yeah, definitely. The Chargers have I love Justin Herbert. I think his receiving core leaves a little bit to be desired. Like I think Mike Williams is a good receiver. I think Keenan Allen is a good receiver, but they're just I don't really know how to describe it. I feel like they're just missing something in that receiving core. I don't think they need a good slot receiver. Mm-hmm. Someone who can, because Keenan Allen's getting a little bit slower, he's getting a little bit older. I think they just need somebody who's like quick in the middle. I think actually someone like a Hunter Renfrow type of player on the Chargers offense would make them very dynamic, or like a good tight end. But I feel like they're like a piece or two away from being, like a Bills or a Chiefs offense.
Yep.
Definitely making excellent points on that one. And next team I want to discuss. So I went on here and I said in my upset pick that the Detroit Lions were going to technically upset the New England Patriots at a 1-3 record at the time. At a 1-3 record at the time. And it was the complete opposite of what I thought was going to happen in the results. The Lions get straight up shut out. They lose 29-0. I mean, just a returning Amon St. Brown was not electric. Jared Goff looked lost out there. The Patriots, after getting truly written off, saying, oh, this is the true end of the Patriots, and that still may be the case. They're still an under 500 team, but this made me look really bad in my picks, and I just have to stand and take it all in. I think the Lions have gotten a pass after going to Hard Knocks. Dan Campbell's like, oh, this team has so much heart. This team is so much fun to watch. I love the Lions. They're lovable losers. And the games prior to this, they were destroying teams on offense, but having a terrible defense behind it, giving up 30, 40 points in these games. And now I think it's time to stop being cute with the Lions and seriously after you get shut out. After you get shut out and then give up 29 points to a team that was 1-3 on their third string quarterback as well, the Lions' honeymoon phase is over and they really need to get to work. You guys feel the same way?
I do, but I want to separate that sentiment and final, assessment of Detroit. So I want to separate that from this game particularly because I think that this was a classic Bill Belichick, eating alive a coach off of his home turf. I thought this was more. I think this was more of an indictment on Dan Campbell versus Belichick in particular versus these two opposing teams because I think that you got Stevenson running all over them for 160 yards. You got Jacoby Myers getting 7 for 111 yards. I thought when you look at Zappi's stat line, the third string backup for New England, I thought that he played pretty much just a conservative game. He was kind of just steadying the ship against the tide. I thought that they didn't really do anything spectacular out of the ordinary. I just thought that this was just kind of a battle of wills between coaching. So I think that two things can be kind of true here. I don't think it needs to be said that Detroit still has a lot of heart and they have potential with this team. But I also think that this was just an embarrassment of riches between a huge chasm in coaching.
I didn't get a chance to watch as much of this game as I wanted to. So I got little brief clips here and there of it. But from what I saw, I mean, it just felt like the Lions weren't able to in the game adjust to how the Patriots were playing them defensively. I think some coaches are really good at developing a game plan ahead of time. I think of Andy Reid, for instance, he's great at coming into a game with a strong game plan. And there's coaches like Belichick who can change the game plan in the game to match the flow of the game. And I think other coaches struggle with that. And I think it looked like Dan Campbell just had no answer for the fact that the Patriots were just completely taking them out of, sync on offense. And of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown isn't 100% healthy. He was on I guess you could refer to it as a pitch count. He wasn't able to be out there for as many snaps as he would have been. DeAndre Swift is not in the game. So you have your backup running back who looked good last week, but I think we're also seeing that Seattle's defense is suspect. I don't know if you want to talk about that later. So I think that, what you really just had here is that the Lions I think they just assumed that they were a great offensive team and just they had no answer for this New England defense. And I guess, 29 points is actually below the average for what the Lions usually give up defensively.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, you look at Zappi's stat line, he didn't even throw for 200 yards passing. So, I mean, it wasn't exactly this all-out aerial attack. It looks like the Patriots just controlled the game. And I don't think the Lions are a playoff team, but I don't think that their offensive production is a fluke either. I think their offense will get back on track, but I don't think this defense is going to be able to help them win many, if any, games this year. Truthfully speaking, their defense is horrific.
Yeah.
I think what happened, just to top off that point, Desmond, because that's a great point. I think a lot of what New England's game planning was kind of allowing what Goff's offense was going to put into play and kind of feed off of their their miscues and their missteps with the offense. So I think a lot of it was just kind of taking what they give them.
Yeah.
Only really thing you could be excited for is Aiden Hutchinson, and he's been quiet in the last couple of games too for Detroit.
And they shut down Hawkinson too.
Yeah,
for sure.
Holding it down. It was just an absolute mess for Detroit. And again, like I said, it's time for them to be taken more seriously. And
it's a good thing they got a bye week.
Yes, as the bye start this week. Very much needed. So let's talk about another beatdown. The Bills just take advantage of another beaten down Steelers team. I mean, Josh Allen goes ham. Gabe Davis returns to form. Kenny Pickett's trying to fight off the biggest guys on defense.
Yeah, don't do that.
And definitely the Steelers have had a rough start to their season, and Mike Tomlin really isn't used to losing so much all at once. But I mean, I don't want to say it was a practice game for the Steelers, but I'm for the Bills per se. But when Josh Allen has almost over 300 yards in the first half, they really had a comfortable game, and I hope people did prop bets for the offensive numbers for the Bills. I mean, not much really to take away from this, but just Kenny Pickett. I don't think has had his breakout game yet, clearly, and the Bills just needing to just beat up on a weaker opponent before they play a big Chiefs team this week, right?
I mean, I felt fortunate that in my fantasy draft this year, my number one pick was Stephon Diggs. Usually people go running back in the first round, but I did not, and I have been thankful ever since. So it was even though Gabe Davis took the biggest points of the week, I was thankful that Stephon Diggs still got his. The Bills are in a different class, man. Like they're just in a different class because while they have the dominant offense like a Chiefs, do, they have the far superior defense.
Yeah.
I mean, their defense can be stifling. They only gave up like 10 points to the Rams, 7 to the Titans. They gave up 21 to the Dolphins. But that's a division game. I'll let that one go. 20 to the Ravens, 3 to the Steelers. I mean, they've been just like absolutely smothering people. And they've already gone over 30 points 3 times this season. It looks like they're a college team out there, just molly-whopping people. I mean, ever since I saw the 2007 Patriots lose to the Giants in that Super Bowl where they were going when they were 18-0, I'm not going to say that anyone's a shoe-in to win the Super Bowl, but the Bills have to be the favorite. I mean, they have
especially now that they have, there were some injuries in the secondary the past couple of weeks, but everyone seems to be back and ready to roll. And they arguably, even their punter is one of the best punters in the league.
It's out of control, man. And there's also reports that Von Miller is openly recruiting Odell Beckham Jr. to come join the team. The report came out today, or it was either today or yesterday, that the Bills are seeking to trade for Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, I saw that.
Are you kidding me?
They really, Devin Singletary's been fine, but if they just really have a star-studded running back, they'll finally get the Super Bowl that Bills Mafia has been waiting for after 4 straight losses in the Super Bowl, after a 15-year period of being lost.
After having to deal with Tom Brady in your division for 20 years,
it's it. We want the Super Bowl once and for all, and they're really making a push for it, and especially when you destroy teams on your way there, and you really make an impact like that. There's no reason why you aren't right on that prediction, Desmond.
I mean, the way I look at it is that's my final point on the Bills here. I love when real fan bases have good teams and their teams are competing for championships. Maybe because I grew up around Philly and I know that our sports town is for real. We love our sports. I know New York's the same way. I know Boston's the same way. Buffalo loves the Bills. That's all Western New York. Bills. Yeah, man. And so I would love for them to have a chance to really, go deep and compete for it this year, because watching the Rams win last year was just whack. The Rams fan base does not. The Rams don't have a fan base. The Rams and the Chargers play 17 road games a year. It's pathetic.
The Rams fan base is all in St. Louis.
Yeah, so I mean, they have to. It's ridiculous. Every time I watch a Rams game, there's always more fans of the visiting team than that. You have to go silent count in your own home. That's embarrassing, but that would never happen in Philly. When the Cowboys come to town this week, I mean, if there are Cowboys fans there, they won't be making that much noise because they might get beat up.
What's crazy, I've made this point to Matt in years past, but it's you at one point you had the Raiders, the Niners, the Chargers, and the Rams in California, and ironically enough, you probably have more Raiders fans and Niners fans in the whole state combined than either of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I mean, yeah, California loves the Raiders and the Niners. I mean, it's like the Rams and the Chargers barely even exist down there.
Yeah. And I don't want to, relay too much anything you guys said, because I think everything was spot on. I think the only thing left to be desired with this team with Buffalo is, running the ball and figuring out, the run game to kind of balance.
Exactly.
It still seems like they only have one way to really win with this team, but it is a damn good way to win. That's for sure, because Josh Allen's already looking like an MVP.
Yeah, no, I mean, their weakness is their run game. And so when I saw them going after Christian McCaffrey, while that is smart, it also feels unfair to everyone else.
Yeah.
It's like just holy shit, just calm down.
And I think it's difficult too. One last thing with Pittsburgh, because I think we knew coming into the season that they were going to have a down year.
Yeah.
I picked them around third or last place in the division. I think that this is definitely not. This was like the worst possible scenario you wanted as a Steelers fan, to have Pickett coming out and getting his hopes and confidence kind of humbled by a game like this, because I said that, if you're going to roll him out and introduce him to the league, you probably want to start him on a week when he would have a weaker opponent, but not against the future, Super Bowl appearing Buffalo Bills. That's for sure.
It's not, I mean, like, I think the press kind of beat Tomlin in submission with this one, because honestly, when you look at their schedule, this was the absolute worst time to bring him out. They're playing like at the Bills, against the Buccaneers, at the Dolphins, at the Eagles, and the Saints have a good defense too. And then you have to play the Bengals. I mean, like, that is a gauntlet of competition coming up for the Steelers. I mean, so either he's going to learn how to play good really fast, or he's going to get crushed.
Boy, when you really make it that clear, it's almost hilarious. Boy, if you really want to stick in the NFL, here you go.
Yeah, learn real fast.
Oh my goodness. Yo, this is a very interesting game to really analyze. Saints and Seahawks kept it really close. Geno is continuing the great season he's having, continuing to battle it out. The Saints did give up points, but they contain the offense when it matters the most. Like, check it, Cam Jordan's big sack in the fourth. Lots of key injuries took place, but Dalton keeps the team alive with second-team receivers after injuries to Olaf and Landry, and questions with Landry and stuff. But the Saints hold on to win, and a much-needed victory for them. So, Devin, you mentioned before about the Seahawks defense. How do you feel they fared against a Saints team that had to put a lot of their backups in?
The Seahawks do not have a defense.
And
I mean, like, it really is as simple as that. I mean,
Jamal Adams.
They miss a lot of things, but honestly, the Seahawks were supposed to be in a rebuilding year. I think like everyone was kind of like, gearing up for that when they got rid of Wilson in the first place. So, I mean, the fact that Geno Smith looks as good as he does, and that the offense looks as good as it does, I think kind of like switched people's expectations around, where they were like, hey, maybe we don't have to think of this as a rebuilding year. Maybe we can think of this as a competing year, because Geno Smith looks great.
Yeah, they did not expect that.
But your defense looks like a Lions defense. And so, like, for as great as your offense is playing, I mean, I don't know that you can really compete that much. I mean, I just don't see it, but I am encouraged with the future of the Seahawks. Their new running back looks great. Walker. I mean, obviously it was a question of, can Geno be good enough to hit your good receivers in Lockett and Metcalf? I think he's answered that question with a resounding yes. Noah Fant has worked into this offense pretty well, but yeah, I mean, defensively, they're having a hard time stopping a nosebleed. So, it's kind of pathetic for them right about now.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, you talked about the new running back there too, but no, Rashad Penny sucks. But I'm sorry to interrupt your point out. You were saying?
No, I'm really high on a lot of the skill positions with the Seattle team. I think this offense is probably a lot better than people give it credit for. But I also had them in a full rebuild as well. Yeah, I mean, I think this was more credit to New Orleans than Seattle, actually, because I think that Dennis Allen finally, figure something out with this offense. I think that the first 4 or 5 weeks, we kind of felt that they were a little out of sync, and then losing Winston kind of set them back a bit, because now they have to go back to the drawing board and readjust this offense as they're figuring it out, and simultaneously, catering it to Dalton as well. But I think reintroducing Taysom Hill at a larger role and reintegrating him into the offense, say what you will as for him as a starter.
Very key to have.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, he's not a desirable starting quarterback, but he alleviates a lot of pressure off Dalton to just kind of game manage and do a lot of spread style offense that you would see more in college, where you're doing a lot of jet sweeps and you're doing a lot of stuff in the backfield that keeps the defense on its toes. And we saw that in this game. I think between Hill and Kamara, they ran Seattle out of the building. They were well over 220 yards on the ground. And I really like the game plan that, that Dennis Allen came up with, because I don't really know what I was to expect of him as a starting head coach. I know that Sean Payton probably left him with a few, options on the table for him to kind of, get this team ready to play. But I think he has a lot to prove, and I think this is a great start for him.
No, I agree. I actually picked up Taysom Hill on my fantasy team like 3 weeks ago, and then dropped him last week thinking like, he's just not doing that great. And then, I regretted it. Yeah, I regretted it pretty hard.
Yeah, man. But yeah, it is. And I think also another thing, moving forward, that the Saints and Dennis Allen should stick with Andy Dalton. He still has something left, at least putting his teams in the right position, especially Alvin Kamara. I think people forget he allegedly does have some legitimate legal issues above his head, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter now. But hey, keep it going. But I think this game shows stick with Andy Dalton. You guys think so too?
Yeah.
I've always thought Andy Dalton was a little, I don't know. I think people kind of gave him too much crap. I mean, I know that he's not like a franchise quarterback, but I think he's more than serviceable. I mean, I think his skills aren't that different than a Jimmy Garoppolo.
It just depends on what your expectations of him are tailored to be, because he can definitely stay in the shadows in New Orleans and play efficiently every Sunday. But it makes it even easier for him to thrive when you have a guy like Taysom Hill to spread the offense and spread the field and, lean more into that run game and let him just kind of do a little bit of play action and do some check down throws where you can move the ball efficiently and just not turn the ball over.
Yeah.
Good stuff, gentlemen. Tampa Bay, let's talk about this. Tampa Bay at Atlanta. Tampa Bay holds on. Falcons do make a push at the end, but they weren't able to keep up after Brady's hot start. And I guess the real question out of this is the questionable roughing the passer call at the end, which prevents a punt and, prevents a last-minute ditch effort with a final drive for Atlanta, which sucks. But, it is what it is. Atlanta continues to hit the cover once again. They're undefeated in the cover for you gamblers out there. But again, another tough loss for Atlanta in general. So let's talk about that story with the roughing the passer. Is there like a new roughing the elder penalty going on with Tom Brady? I mean, weird stuff. And I really, again, with the other questionable call, when they had the roughing the passer in the KC Raiders game, it ultimately didn't matter with the final result. This prevented Atlanta to have a final drive. And, are we really going to keep having these debates till they have flag football in professional football? I mean, I don't know with these things. The quarterback is the most protected position, literally and figuratively. And, I really think calls like this can make a big difference, and I think it really did with Atlanta this week. What I would love to hear your comments on how the roughing the passer affected this particular game, and what are we going to even do moving forward with this, unless they legitimately change the rules of no tackling, because clearly we don't know what exactly is roughing the passer. It's not like if you've seen Longest Yard when they throw the quarterback down and literally punch him. Yeah, that's roughing the passer, but this seemed like a clean sack.
There's 3 things here I want to touch on.
Let us know.
First, I think that to some degree, the NFL actually likes this, because we spent years as NFL fans having the conversation of what is a catch. And I think it drove a lot of online, debates and people being pissed off, and the ESPN personalities would go lose their minds over this. And I think to a degree that's part of the NFL's business plan. I think that they like the outrage, because I think it gets people talking. And I think that at the end of the day, that works for them. So I don't think they're actually too upset about the whole needing to get it right thing. I think a part of this is I think it's part of the calculated chaos that they like about their situation. But secondly, I think that in the more human element of it, I think that, when we talk about basketball, we see all the time players lobbying for calls, and it works a lot. In the NFL, it doesn't work really at all. But I think this is one of those times where Tom Brady got sacked. He got upset because apparently he's not allowed to be touched because he's dramatic, as we all know. And then he got up off the ground, and then he started like lobbying for the flag, and then the flag came out. So the ref felt the lobby of the GOAT and felt the need to throw the flag. Now, afterwards, people were saying things like, oh, well, like after what happened with Tua the last week, of course, we're going to protect the quarterback. But if you go back to last week, we're talking about Tua, no one was really talking about the violence of the hit on Tua. People were mad at the fact that after he showed signs of a concussion, that the Dolphins didn't do the right things to protect the dude.
Right. Excellent.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, it feels like they're trying to like change the conversation around. We're like, oh, well, we're trying to protect the quarterback now. It's like, no, the hit against Tua wasn't violent. You just did the wrong thing after the dude got up and was obviously hurt. So don't turn around and try to act like now, like, oh, well, we're still not going to actually change, what we need to change with the concussion protocols. We're just going to have these ridiculous roughing the passer penalties now. Like, no, it's a cop out. Like, that ref shouldn't have made that call. It was a fucking egregious call. And at the end of the day, I mean, I would hope that more NFL fans get pissed off so that we don't normalize that kind of nonsense, because, like, I know they want to protect the quarterback, but at the same time, like, we all have rooting interest in these games. If you're a Falcons fan, you're probably losing your damn mind, after seeing a call like that, because you also know that call wouldn't have went for Marcus Mariota.
They would encourage it. They wouldn't even make a throw the flag.
No. You couldn't. Yeah, no, Desmond, you're 100% correct with all, three prongs of that argument. I think you could have really summed up exactly what we saw this past weekend and in this game on Tua Tagovailoa, because when Brian was sitting in your seat, theoretically, last week we were going through the the how and why the situation with Tua was emerging and how it was developing, and I said that this is going to produce a long string of unintended consequences going into the next week of football. And lo and behold, you got two bogus calls, both in the Kansas City game and this game, with referees throwing out the playbook and looking the other way for the sake of overprotecting the quarterback, because there's so much money invested interest in that position and that particular player as Tom Brady. And right. I think we get to a dangerous ground and dangerous territory where we're looking the other way and we're changing the script for how the league is to be operated under the guise of the rules. And we're getting away from how the game's actually meant to be refereed. And I think that's a dangerous place to go. And I don't say that lightly because I don't like throwing that word around. But I don't like the call. I don't think that there was any textbook change to the hit, that because now not only are you pulling back on defenses and you're making the game less fun for defenses and the turnovers and the excitement that comes with competitive football, but you're also undermining a lot of how these guys play the game, and you're actually forcing more undue error on some of these pass rushers and these defensive players, because now they have to pull themselves back and retract and possibly get themselves hurt as well.
Yeah, I mean, they've asked too much. Like, at a certain point, I know that everyone kind of complained when they were like, we have to protect the quarterbacks more, and they're like, oh, you can't go high. Like, all right, well, all right, we'll go low. Like, oh no, you can't go low now. Like, all right, well, now you have a strike zone. It's like, okay, well, now they're hitting the freaking strike zone, and then it's like, oh, well, you can't tackle them in a way where you're putting your whole body weight on them because you're gonna break collarbones. It's just like, and now you're adding this element to them. It's like, at a certain point, you have to realize that you are making it impossible. Like, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing left, especially with the era of mobile quarterbacks. You got people like Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen. How do you tackle these people?
Yep. And the thing is, with the example, the reason I didn't like the Tua example as to why that they were going to have this overreaction from the league top down is because they made it about Tua's past history of injury as the reason as to why they needed to protect the player and the position. And it's like, no, that's not why you protect quarterbacks. because there's plenty of young, talented quarterbacks in here that put their bodies in the line and take huge risks in the open field. But now you're resorting yourself in terms of the league's responsibility to the rule book. You're bringing it to the lowest common denominator by protecting Brady and these other quarterbacks where you can't even spit or fart in their freaking zone, let alone hit them.
And you got to be away from the PR that people give. Don't listen to the people on Twitter. Most people on Twitter are delusional, don't know what they're talking about. And I'm not saying that they, take their opinions lightly, because I do think a lot of changes would happen if they did. But I know they definitely don't want to keep getting the ridicule with the head injuries. But again, you have to understand this is what those players sign up for, what we as fans want to see. And there's definitely a way you could keep safety in the game without also taking the integrity away from it as well.
The only thing I want to say finally about this too, before I hand it over to Desmond, before we move on, is because I think that this issue will correct itself over the next few weeks. This really felt like the tone of this past weekend's football and the rules that were going on. It felt almost like a little bit of overcompensation, looking back in hindsight at the Tua hit, and I think that it will ultimately correct itself in the next few weeks.
Fair point.
I mean, player safety is a big deal. I think that most people get it. I played football when I was younger. Thinking about it now, I wonder about like CTE kind of stuff, because I played defensive line. So you take a lot of those like repetitive hits over and over and over again. So head trauma is a real thing. You obviously want to do what you can, but at the same time, there are limits. At a certain point, you can only protect people so much. If we're trying to add on extra layers of protection, and let's invest in better helmets. Let's invest into a second bye week. How the fuck has that not happened yet? Excuse my language, but there's obvious ways to mitigate it, to have people be more healthy and sustainable without absolutely changing the game to a point where it cannot be played correctly for certain positions.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Excellent points as always, gentlemen. The Vikings made some big moves, both on the running and passing game. I think the Bears are a team that if a team needs to reset, play the Chicago Bears in 2022. That was the case for Minnesota. Dalvin Cook looked awesome. Kirk Cousins looked awesome. And they seem that they can get their groove back with this big division win for Minnesota. Am I right, guys? The Bears, do we see the Bears even winning again at this point? And are the Vikings proving that they can take this division, or at least make strides to, especially with the Packers having their struggles?
Well, I originally had Minnesota winning division because I saw a lot of the setbacks being played out with Green Bay, and I thought that Kirk Cousins, as long as he's playing at 1:00 on Sunday and playing under the with no expectations that they were going to be fine, and I think it's playing out perfectly. But in all seriousness, there was a lot of upgrades in the offseason. I think I fell in love with Minnesota's roster a lot, way more ahead of schedule. And I was really just shockingly impressed by Kirk Cousins. 12 of 15 on third down is incredible. I thought that if you look at the stats, they dominated in yards, passing yards, rushing yards per play, time of possession, and first downs. All across the board, they were just unbelievable. And they're going to keep moving. They're just going to keep moving at a high level. I love everything they're doing on offense, and I think the defense, showed out as well.
The Vikings should make the playoffs. Will they win the division? Hard to say. Watching the Vikings play the Eagles, back in week 2, I thought that the Vikings kind of gave that game to us in a way, watching that entire game. They played this really weak, shell defense the whole game. And I think they've mostly stuck with that through the whole season, which I think is a really dumb way of playing defense. I think the Eagles played that a few years back. You're basically just allowing people to take chunks all the way down the field, and you try to get them into the red zone, and where you hope to get them at that point in time, so you don't have anything go over your head. You're basically admitting that your secondary sucks. And on top of that, Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback when just like you said, Alex, when the pressure isn't on, but the pressure is eventually going to be on. So can he perform in the bigger games towards the end of the season, in primetime games, when he's competing for the division, when they have to go back to Lambeau, or when they have to go to Lambeau rather? I don't know. I don't know, but they should make the playoffs. On to the Bears. Will the Bears win this season? They are facing the Commanders on Thursday. So
Oh man, this will be a tough one to watch.
when I saw that, after the Colts Broncos game last week, I was like, who's gonna be in the next game? And it was like Bears Commanders. I was like, who is scheduling these games?
On Thursday Night Football too, this is what Jeff Bezos invested in. This is what you literally have to pay for too.
You know what? Craziest part about that is somebody did the math here. I guess Bezos has a contract for 11 years for $13 billion. And when you break it down, he's actually paying $78 million per game, which includes last week's game and this week's game. So I think that's just hilarious. But back to the Bears. Back to the Bears here. This might just be the worst offense in the NFL. Justin Fields looks like a bust. I really think he is.
He's definitely
and that's not because I'm a Penn State guy and he's an Ohio State guy. I mean, like, I just think he's a bust. I don't think if you put him in a different system, he's going to magically be better. He just doesn't he looks like he is so shook on the football field. I don't know if he's got like an anxiety problem or if he's got some other things going on, but he does not look like a good quarterback. And I don't think the Bears have a future with him as their quarterback. And I'm selling all things Bears right now. So, I mean, like, the Commanders also aren't a great team. So the Bears might find a way to win the occasional game against other bad teams, but their only chance of winning any game is against other very bad teams.
Well, I want to push back a little bit, Desmond, because I'm certainly no Bears apologist, because I think they suck as well too. But before I sell all stock on Justin Fields, I want to remind everybody as well, including our listeners, that he did inherit possibly the worst possible offensive line the past 2 years. Also with a coach in Matt Nagy that didn't really know what he was doing, felt a lot over his skis last year.
And I think the Bengals might want to have a say for the offensive line conversation, but yeah, go ahead.
But I mean, just like in the past 2 years, they were like 30th and 31st or something around there. And in any respect, losing Allen Robinson with the contract and not really having a running game that's dependable week to week, it really is bereft of options all over the place. And defense can only take you so far. So I think before we're ready to sell the stock, because I'm certainly no Justin Fields fan, I want to make sure that we can kind of get an accurate read on him before everybody sells their stock.
Alex is giving the measured, like, fair take. I'm giving the hot take for the sense of trying to say something controversial. But to be fair here, I could be wrong about that, because in the class where Lamar Jackson came out and Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, so on and so forth, I only got 2 of those 5 correct when I was thinking about like which quarterbacks were going to be good and which ones were going to be busts. I accurately predicted that Darnold and Rosen would be busts. But I also thought that Allen was going to be a bust, and I was so wrong about that. But I thought that Baker would be okay, and I thought Lamar would be good. So I mean, like, my history of judging quarterbacks is so. So I mean, like, we'll see how this pans out.
But to your point, like, it really depends on where these guys go in the draft as well, because I don't think Lamar would have had the immediate success if he wasn't in Baltimore under Ozzie Newsome and that organization, that front office. And I think that if you look at on the other side of the tracks, this front office and this organization, they're just so incompetent at every level that it's really hard to get a fair reading and an assessment on Justin Fields.
They're allergic to offense. And I think it's also an indictment on the ownership in a little bit.
For sure.
Like, they're talking about building a new stadium right now, which I think Soldier Field's like the oldest stadium in America. They're talking about building a new stadium, and they have no plans on making it a dome. Now, I know that, like, you want to keep the home field advantage of Chicago and cold and windy, but like, in a team that has not had a good offense in my entire lifetime, maybe just let that go and get a dome so that people can actually play like a pass heavy version of football in the city of Chicago. Like, maybe just go that route.
And I think it's fair to say that that they're truly a football town. That's a Bears town, even more than the Cubs and the White Sox. Like they really
And
love
the
their
Bulls,
Bears and the Bulls. And ever since they made the Super Bowl in 06, they they had a little spurts when God, why am I blanking on his name? Oh my
Bobby
God.
Smith.
Well, yeah, Bobby Smith's coach. No, the quarterback.
Oh,
Real
Rex
Housewives.
Grossman.
Well, yeah, I mean, they made it with Rex Grossman, but made the playoffs.
Jay Cutler.
Jay Cutler, one of the biggest butts of the jokes in the NFL. And and then I know they somehow made the playoffs with Mitch, but they really underachieve and they're really hitting their lowest points. And
Chicago's a great sports town, man. Like I feel for the fact that like they can't seem to get it right with the Bears. Like, I mean, if the Eagles went that long being that bad, I would be furious.
I'd be burning jerseys too.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do, guys? But speaking of Lovie Smith, he finally got his first wins as the Texans head coach. They go back and forth to Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence. But ultimately, Houston's ground game with Pierce was a driving force to give them their first win of the year. Bad turnovers for T-Law and Etney, how do you pronounce it?
ETN.
Yeah, exactly. DTN. We'll go with the ETN. So, but ultimately, I know that historically Jacksonville's had a hard time beating Houston, but ultimately Houston finally gets the win that they needed. And I think the big question to ask here, I want to talk about T-Law on this. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence was as good as it got when it came to high school and to youth, high school, and college football. Now in the NFL, though he's been able to have some durability, he's keeping himself in there, has had improved weapons, I still don't think he's hit the potential that people wanted to see from him. And now after losing to a team that was winless in week 5, and still having their issues, though they have a good coach, do we think Trevor Lawrence will be snapping out of it anytime soon and make a good run with this team?
I do, personally. I mean, just if I look at the first 4 weeks, obviously they were 2-2, but I mean, Trevor Lawrence had a good game against the Commanders, good game against the Colts. Like they blew out the Chargers. And I think they stuck in it in that Eagles game when, man, they got 21 points and that was after having 4 or 5 turnovers.
Yeah.
I like sometimes like the NFL is a very weird sport in the sense where like rivalries really do matter. And sometimes a team can just have your numbers depending on matchups, and I think that's really the case here. I mean, there is something to be said if a team beats you 9 times in a row. 9 times in a row. Like that is insane. Like,
yeah.
I mean, really let that sink in. So, I mean, like, I think the Jaguars are a little shook when they get on the field against the Texans. I mean, if a team beats you that many times in a row, that's in your head at that point. Especially because the Texans aren't that good. So, I mean, I look at the stat line here. He threw for 286. I mean, they ran for over 100 yards. I mean, yeah, there's a couple interceptions here, but I mean, they were moving up and down the field. They just had a hard time getting in the end zone. I'm willing to let this game go. I think Trevor Lawrence, it's too early to really say if he's like going to be great or just a mid-tier quarterback. But I think that the progression from last year to this year is still enough of an improvement for me to say that I think he's actually on the right track.
Just shows just how damn good NFL talent is that this guy who was Mr. Perfect in all youth football now goes to the NFL. And, like you said, it's not time to write him off just yet, but he just has a ways to go.
Yeah, I'm highly encouraged as well by Trevor Lawrence. I think that some of these miscues are just, poor reads and miscommunications with the receivers. But if you look at the stat lines, they won on every single front statistically with this offense. And I'm highly encouraged by this team. I think like as soon as they continue to keep improving and buttoning up here and there, I have a lot more faith in Trevor Lawrence under the supervision of Doug Peterson particularly as well.
Yeah, much more than Urban Meyer.
Oh God.
Yeah.
No one wants to supervise that.
So we had Derrick Henry have another good game for the Titans. The Titans getting the wins they needed to make up after some tough losses at the beginning of the year. The Commanders really don't have any upside besides making a push in the fourth quarter. And my big takeaway to talk with this game, do we think the Titans are, what's the word I'm looking, not say back to normal per se, but do we think that they're going to be okay after a rough start in the first few weeks of the year? Does this game show anything of that?
Not to me.
Yeah.
No, I think cause for concern in Tennessee is still really high.
Okay.
I think, well, one, you barely beat an inferior opponent. Washington's a terrible team.
True.
And on top of the fact that you barely beat them, Treylon Burks, their number one wide receiver, well, their round one pick.
Yeah.
Actually, who they actually got in replacement of AJ Brown.
Yep.
He just got injured. So I mean, as he was coming along, you still have that issue. Robert Woods has been he's been okay, but their receiving game is terrible. Mm-hmm. And on a team where you have Derrick Henry, the number one thing you need is a good passing attack, because if you don't, then they just load up the box, and even he can't get through 9-man boxes. I mean, not at a proficient level anyway. So I mean,
clearly
Tennessee's going to keep having a good defense, but as this passing game for Tennessee continues to be mediocre, I don't think anyone can really take them that seriously. I mean, if they make the playoffs, I would be shocked. In the AFC, with as deep as it is this year, I mean, I just can't see them even being a 7 seed.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that, this team only goes as far as Tannehill goes, unfortunately. And this, losing AJ Brown was, a tremendous impact. You could see it clearly with the stagnation of their passing game. And you can only rely so heavily on Derrick Henry, particularly when the defense is not giving you the turnovers that it did in years past. That secondary is definitely, a lot slimmer. They don't have a lot of the same pass rushing threat that they did in years past. So they can only really win a certain amount of ways. And truthfully, I think that they could have easily lost this game if Wentz doesn't throw the pick. So, it's definitely not a feather in the cap for the commies in Washington, but I think that, Titans, they were very lucky to squeeze out a win there.
Yeah, I mean, I know that this is more of a Titans conversation than a Commanders conversation, but God, the Commanders just look awful, which is great for the Eagles.
Oh, of course.
So this is a good thing. But I feel bad for Ron Rivera, because I believe that he's a good coach, but I feel like everything goes to die in Washington.
Carson Wentz seems to be a real bad luck charm. I know wins it. Has an MVP caliber season with you guys, doesn't play in the Super Bowl, gives it to Nick Folk, truly screws the Colts last year in the final 3 games of this regular season. And now here he looks like what people thought he would be. Trash.
Carson Wentz, the person, is a good dude, but on the football field, it is overwhelmingly clear that it's something in his head. Mm-hmm. He has some types of performance anxiety, or just it's something mental with him. You can see it, because mechanically he has great stuff. He can make all the throws, got a big arm. I think he can do the touch passes, he can throw the bombs. I mean, everything you would want from a quarterback's tools he has, but his mind is just unable to make the right decisions. And I think that's just going to be the whips or the yips. I think that's just going to be how the rest of his career goes. Unfortunately, he just seems like he just can't get out of his own way.
Yeah, if you look at some of those plays where he was, when he was bounced out of the box, and he had to pivot to his right, he threw guys that were wide open on the sideline. He either underthrew them or threw them wide right, left. Something's clearly wrong. Aside from the mechanics, and the one that's glaringly, obvious to me is 3rd down. They were 1 for 11. That is insane.
Wow. Can't win if you can't convert.
You can't sustain drives like that. There's no way.
I mean, yeah, good for the Eagles, but damn. I mean, because I have family in the DC area. Those people love that football team. That is a big time fan base. So I almost feel for them, but I don't.
I wish it was
They
the late
reap what they
80s
sow.
and early
Yeah.
90s, but what are you going to do? Panthers and 49ers. Baker continues to play bad, but ultimately he's hurt. So it looks like we're going to not see him in a few weeks. 49ers stellar D keeps being a stellar D, especially the defensive line, arguably the best defensive line in football. Jimmy G keeps at it. Jimmy G, as we've said before, he may not exactly bring fantasy points. He may not exactly, do star-studded highlights, but the guy just knows how to win. And ultimately, after this game, the next day, Matt Rhule is the first coach to get fired in the 22 NFL season. So with this, guys, some takeaways there. I think there's plenty to praise about San Francisco. As I said, great line. I think that Jimmy G's clearly here to stay. Weapons, as long as they're healthy with Ayuk and Debo, they're in a good spot. I think we could praise the 49ers, and not that they're the most underrated team, but they're clearly a team that needs a lot more credit because they really can make another deep playoff run, I believe. Anything to add to that before we focus on what's going to change in Carolina?
I love Debo Samuel. I
Yeah.
really do. I think that if you were taking all wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs, like if you would have like lumped those three into one group, he's in my top 10 still. Like, I think he's so dynamic. I love everything about him. And I think he is the sole reason why the 49ers are going to be relevant this year. Because honestly, outside of him, George Kittle's, still a little banged up, but their team really isn't that special offensively.
You don't think so?
Offensively, not defensively, but offensively.
Okay. Do you think, though, despite that, even if they have maybe make some, I know the trade deadline's in a couple of weeks, if they make some adjustments there, maybe especially their offensive line, do you think they can be more sustainable in that sense?
They need another receiver.
Okay.
I mean, because Ayuk is okay. He's not great. And Kittle, again, is banged up. And when you have a quarterback who's just kind of average the way Garoppolo is, like, he's not bad, but he's not great. He's just mid. So, like, you need to put more playmakers around him to elevate him. And I don't think that the 49ers have a great receiving core. They have Debo, and that's about the highlights there.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's just my opinion on it.
I said from the preseason prediction that this team will go as far as Debo goes, just, regardless of whether you're starting Lance or Garoppolo. But I was heavily impressed because I always knew that the 49ers defense was stellar, but I didn't think it would be enough to win multiple ways in this league. And I think that this team is showing that they can win twofold on the defense side of the ball and on offense, because it was a very pedestrian game for Garoppolo, but he converted on third down when they needed to, and he kept a lot of drives alive. And I think that even when they took away Debo Samuel in a game like this and they just relied solely on Jeffrey Wilson on the ground, they were able to still win by shutting down that offense for Baker with 6 sacks. So I think that having multiple ways to win is really the strength of this team for San Francisco, because moving into the rest of the season, they're going to have to find multiple ways to beat teams.
Yeah.
Now with Carolina, like I said, Matt Rhule is out, major injury problems. I think it's clear that the Carolina Panthers should be sellers. It's weird because technically, aren't they technically in a rebuild this season, or they were projecting one, and now they're going to essentially rebuild again? PJ Tucker's going to be your starting quarterback. We still have Sam Darnold injured. And it seems that the Baker acquisition ultimately wasn't what they expected. So, is it time are we going to see Carolina now be one of the worst teams in the NFL for a few years after what has transpired this season?
I have another podcaster who I've, recorded with a couple of times. He lives in Charlotte, Panthers fan. He made a post about this today, and he said, in the last 25 years, here's the worst teams in the NFL as far as winning seasons are concerned. It's like the Falcons have 11 in the last 25 years, the Dolphins have 9, Texans have 8, Jets, Jaguars, and Bears and Panthers have 7. The
Mhm.
only 2 teams who are worse are the Lions and the Commanders, having only 6 winning seasons in the last 25 years. So yeah, they don't have a culture of winning in Carolina.
Yeah.
They're one of the worst franchises in the league, like consistently. If it was me, I know that the NFL doesn't really have a great like trade frenzy the way like other sports do, like MLB or like the NBA,
Yeah.
but they should like push the trade deadline back, like a month or so, and like give teams more of an opportunity to trade people. Because when I heard that the Bills were trying to get Christian McCaffrey, like one, I was like, damn, like the Bills don't need him, but also good for the Panthers for finally figuring this out, because it's time to like blow that thing up. Like their team is just not, their defense is good, sure, but offensively, that whole unit needs to be scrapped. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, sell Christian McCaffrey, get rid of DJ Moore. He's a good piece. Some team will need him. The 49ers could use him. I mean, but like,
yeah, DJ Moore clearly has to go to a better team at this point. He can really be
some
a
of those
lottery pick.
players are having their best years wasted on the fact that the Carolina Panthers can't seem to get the right quarterback, which really what this comes down to.
Well, the thing too we got to remember is that, and Matt and I talked about this, Desmond, is that the Panthers, we only speculated that the way that they're going to turn around this offense for the remainder of the season is to make McCaffrey like a jack of all trades type of player. Get him out in the flank, switch up his role and the positions in this offense, and he hasn't yet been able to do that, and I don't think he will be. And I think that as long as he still remains a healthy blue chip asset, they're going to try to move off of him and get him to a better place, because the one thing we know is that David Tepper, the owner, took over this team with inheriting some of these assets and these pieces. So he has no loyalty to a lot of this roster, particularly Baker Mayfield, because that was more of a product of him being on the open market and not having a backup plan behind Darnold. So I think that all things are on the table for a guy like him, and I think he wants to swing for the fences, kind of like the way Ballmer did when he first took over the Clippers.
And they should. They got nothing to lose.
Yeah,
I mean, Charlotte's a great sports town. I think they really love their teams down there. And, I think you got to put a better product on the field, man. I mean, in this day and age, scoring like less than 20 points every single week is just not a good enough like product in the NFL. The one stat that I heard was that under Matt Rhule, like if a team scored 17 points against the Panthers, that the Panthers were 1-27.
Yeah,
that is insane. Like,
I don't think
football
going to
now.
Get another head coaching job.
Not in the NFL.
Yeah,
maybe in college. Maybe like, I don't know, like Grambling State.
Maybe Wagner College.
And 2 points to consider in favor of this team with a reboot is that, first of all, it's not something that you can scrap a history with like the Packers or the Bears. They don't have a history, so they don't have a lot to be beholden to in terms of an identity of what kind of team they want to be. They can really make from scratch and really try a lot of things. But secondarily, too, if you look at the timeline, Brady's not going to be in the league much longer. So that division is wide open.
It's wide open.
Yeah, and so there's so much ability and mobility to go from worst to first in a year's time if they do try to reboot and just scrap everything.
And that division's been great for that over the years. I mean, I don't know, I forget the stat at the moment, but there was like, I think a decade-long period where the NFC South winner was different every single year.
Yeah.
We're saying something. The Cowboys and the Rams. Cowboys just manhandled the Rams offense. Cooper Rush stays undefeated as a starter. Rams have some serious offensive line issues. And I think, everybody likes to say the Super Bowl hangover, but it might be apparent for the Rams here. So what do we really take out of this? I'll give it to you, Desmond, with the Cowboys as your NFC East rival. Do you take them seriously after this game?
The Cowboys are a team that I always take seriously, even if they're the worst team in the league, because I, under every circumstance, want them to lose every single game. And seeing them right now is actually kind of exciting for me as an Eagles fan. And I'm gonna tell you this why. Because when you hate someone, you don't want to just beat them when they're terrible. You want to beat them when they're great. And I think that the Cowboys have a mostly a great team right now. So yeah, it's fun when the Eagles beat the Cowboys down when they're having a bad year, when they're going like 6-10, but beating down the Cowboys when they're 4-1 sounds like a much better thing to me. Like I can't wait to see that. The Dallas Cowboys have a great defense. Like everyone's been talking about it. Micah Parsons, Penn State guy. You know, like I hate the fact that he went to the Cowboys the same way I hate the fact that Saquon Barkley went to the Giants. You know, these things kind of keep me up at night, but what are you going to do? You know, but at the end of the day, I think that the Dallas defense is for real, but I do think that offense is severely limited. You know, everyone's talking about how Cooper Rush is undefeated as a starter, so on and so forth.
People really like to, let's be real, they really like to dick ride him. They think
but when you break down these games, when you look at how this is actually going, Dallas flipped their philosophy, went from like passing heavy to now running heavy. They're running like 60% of the time, and their offensive line has been great for years. So that's a given. But as far as the passing game is concerned, Cooper Rush isn't really that great. I mean, he's just not making mistakes, which is all you want from your backup quarterback. So, I mean, I don't think that they're this Goliath. I think that they've had a decent schedule, and I think that they're playing great defense, but they're very beatable. And I think they were fortunate to be playing a home game in Los Angeles against a Rams team who can't figure out how to play offense besides throw to Cooper Kupp. The Rams look clearly pathetic right now. And so, I mean, like
Allen Robinson bus.
Yeah, that was a bad pick. Yeah. But I mean, the Cowboys scored 22 points and won. I mean, it's not an overwhelming performance. I think that says a lot about the Rams as much as it does about the Cowboys in that game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. I think that, you know, Cooper Rush is just doing all that you can ask for a backup. He's not making mistakes. He's managing the game, so on and so forth. I like the fact that they had a nice bounce back game in combination tandem with Pollard and Elliott. They combined for $164 and a touchdown. They didn't really turn the ball over too much as an offense in general, but I mean, there's a lot. There's so much, you know, to be desired with this Rams team. And I said from the outset that they were going to have the hangover even after winning the Super Bowl, because they are trying to manage through a lot of injuries. You know, Stafford has a nagging shoulder and a shag, you know, this and that. And they're trying to integrate, you know, some weapons with Allen Robinson, which hasn't worked so far at all. Cam Akers has been banged up, and they lost Von Miller in the offseason. So they're definitely working through some adjustments with that roster. And I think that it's going to continue to be a little bit difficult sledding with them. But I've just been so overwhelming, and I hate saying this, overwhelmingly impressed with this Dallas defense. I did not know how good this team would be, just from a turnover standpoint and keeping teams at a certain offensive output. I think that they shut down the Rams despite what we think for their misgivings. But to keep a team like that to 10 points is really saying something. And I think that last year I put a lot of it on just kind of being able to generate turnovers, like with the kind of year that Trayvon Diggs had. But if you look at their front four and you look at how stout their pass rush is, it looks like they're really coming together and clicking on all elements with this defense. And I think that if you continue to lean on the run game until the wheels fall off, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. I hate saying it. Now, it doesn't mean that they can beat the best teams in the league, but I think with their schedule being less than desirable for opponents, I think that they will continue to keep their run going.
The NFC East teams, and this is actually also why, as an Eagles fan, while I'm excited about our 5-0 start, I'm not blowing the horn saying that we're the best team in the league, because I just don't think that it's true. NFC East teams have a very easy schedule this year, playing the NFC North and playing the AFC South. We have very easy schedules, and I think that's going to allow all three of these teams, the Eagles, the Giants, and the Cowboys, just to rack up wins this year. So with that being said, I'm looking at the Cowboys right now. They gave up 19 points against the Buccaneers in week 1. That was the most points they've given up this year. 19. That was the most points they've given up this year. Yeah, the defense is for real. So, I mean, like, at the end of the day, if you want to beat the Cowboys, you're going to have to come correct. Their pass rush is ridiculous, so you got to catch them in screens, quick passes. You're going to have a mobile quarterback. I think the Eagles got that. I think that I think Dallas is going to be in the conversation for the whole year. The Rams have no offensive line. And for people who are kind of like casual football fans, you never want to talk about the offensive line because there's nothing sexy about it. But you need to have a dominant offensive line to be a good NFL team. And the Rams look terrible on the offensive line. Their running back Akers is coming off an Achilles injury. He's lucky to even be on the field. And Henderson, the other guy, he's okay, but it's obvious he's a number 2 or number 3 running back. And then you're asking basically Stafford, who was said to be injured all off season, to come in and just throw to receivers like Skoranek, who can't get open really. Allen Robinson can't get open. I mean, this Rams team is going to have a rough year. Like, I don't think it's a fluke. I don't think it's like a 1 or 2 game thing. I think it's a full season thing with them.
Yeah,
real test for McVay.
What?
I said real test for McVay. We'll see if he could now be a whole, people have said McVay's an overrated coach with his deep rosters in the past. And now that he still has a team that looks really good on paper, but it's really not clicking, especially losing losing Whitworth he's clearly very missed.
Yeah.
And you still got the Rams. I mean, you still got the Niners coming back to town in 2 weeks, and you still got to go to Tampa. You got Arizona, which is still not an easy game, and then you got to go to Kansas City in 5 weeks. So there's a lot of tough games still on the schedule to be played, and we'll see.
Yeah.
Just 2 more games to go. The Eagles. Now we can focus on your Eagles, Desmond. Playing at 4:00 on Sunday. They kept it. It was a close game against Arizona.
Always is.
But Jalen Hurts uses his legs. He's still able to have 239 yards, going 26-36. And, shouts to your kicker, Cameron Dicker, who keeps the game alive and ultimately keeps them in a undefeated season. Arizona made a push, and Mendola has a bad missed kick in the 4th quarter. But ultimately, you hold on, and the Eagles stay undefeated. Now, you were making some of your points earlier with that you feel that Eagles, though undefeated, you don't feel they're the best team yet. What do you think they can do, especially looking at this game this past week, where you can feel more comfortable and you feel that they can be that best team in the NFC?
Honestly, with the Eagles, it's two things. One, I don't think we've faced great opponents yet, so we're not really sure what we're capable of. But 2, I think that this team just needs more time to gel. I mean, AJ Brown is still just like in his 5th game on the Eagles. We've put in new offensive sets this year for Jalen Hurts. And I think that he's still progressing, becoming the quarterback that he's going to end up being, going forward. Because, he looks a lot better than he did last year. But, all things considered, he made an emphasis to throw more from in the pocket this year, when last year he really struggled from there and tried to avoid it. And I'm seeing him now, when in times in the past where he would have just relied on his legs and just ran, he's still getting out of the pocket, but still looking downfield, still looking to throw the ball. I think that our defense got a major upgrade this year. Getting that safety, I think was it Gardner Webb or Gardner Johnson, safety from the Saints that we picked up, and also getting Hassan Reddick. I think that the Eagles are in a really strong place, but what I would like to see is more of a killer instinct. We've been blowing out teams in the first half, and we've been letting teams come back in the second half. We've done it 4 times now. And it's just telling me that this team just hasn't quite figured out some continuity yet. So obviously the talent's there, but they haven't figured out how exactly to put teams away. That kind of worries me a little bit. So I think we got some good tests coming up on the schedule. I think, some tough defenses ahead of us. I think the Texans have a good defense. Cowboys have a good defense. Packers have a good defense. Titans have a good defense. So, we're going to have some good tests throughout the year, and also playing the Giants towards the end of the year twice. Giants are the final game of the season, so that'll be interesting. But I just don't think that we're as cohesive as we need to be to go to the Super Bowl. At the beginning of the year, I didn't think we were going to the Super Bowl. So the fact that we're now transitioning to talking about it is a big deal for me, but we're just not quite there yet, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I think it's a fair, sobering assessment, especially for someone who's a fan. I think, but you got to recognize too. I think like the throne of the NFC right now is something that is going to be ultimately backed into. I think because a lot of these other teams have major gaping flaws in the NFC, and I think that crown is wide open by virtue of whoever can kind of get to the top first, even if they don't have the kind of that killer instinct you're talking about with Philadelphia. But I still think they're easily far and away the best team in the NFC, and they have the least amount of holes. And I think like going into this game, like I had a few questions still concerning, with Hurts and how good this passing game can be, because we know that they're a run first dominant team. But Goddard and Devontae combined for 18 for 182, and they looked unbelievable all game. They reduced their turnovers, they dominated time of possession, and there's a lot of great things to lean on, especially if you want to, start putting teams away earlier. You have that combination of just running it down people's throats and not turning the ball over, and then having the ability to have play action in the game. With Sirianni's offense, I think that this team is just destined for the top. I really do. I am more encouraged week to week watching how their passing game has evolved, and obviously they'll have some setbacks here and there, but I don't really see a flaw with this team.
Yeah, I don't really see too many flaws myself. I just think there's things that's got to be just like gelled together. Like teams in the NFL this year with reducing OTAs, reducing the preseason, so on and so forth. Like teams have less time together than they used to. And so I think what I really want to see over the course of this season is if the Eagles can kind of just shore up some of those mistakes, kind of like find ways to play in situational moments better. Cause I still think we're kind of shaky on third down sometimes, or like those short conversions or being in the red zone. So, I mean, like there's still some things to improve on there. And defensively, I would love to see us get a little more pressure on the quarterback. I mean, I think we have a good defensive line, but it just hasn't looked spectacular as of it doesn't look like Dallas's,
Yeah.
So I would love to see the defensive line step it up a little bit.
I think situational football for Sirianni, especially being a second-year coach, it's like you want him to kind of take that next step eventually to get some kind of reassurances from the leadership role. But particularly when I look at that major crucial sack in the third quarter against Arizona, it backed up Philly, taking them out of field goal range. And that's an example, like you said, of situational football where if they kind of tighten the screws up and kind of get in Hurts' ear and kind of get him to throw the ball away preemptively a little better, having that foresight will make him a better quarterback, and it'll get them a maximal production on all these possessions that they carry.
Yeah, just quick note on Arizona. I don't know what the beef is between Murray and Cliff Kingsbury, but damn, they got to figure that out, because I think Arizona's got a lot of talent. It just feels like they're just really undisciplined.
You also have DeAndre Hopkins coming back.
Right.
We'll still see. We'll still see if he has something left in the tank. I think this is going to be his last week suspended, and he'll be back next week.
Yeah.
But if he's DeAndre Hopkins, well, there you go. Right. Enough said.
And you know what? He's such a catalyst, because I'm not saying that he's more important or more vital to this team than Kyler, but he definitely changes the dynamic of how they operate this offense, because it feels a little stale, a little stagnant, a little predictable. They really can't move the ball, they can't run the ball, that's for sure. So I think that when he comes back, it may open things up where they can start running a little more RPOs with the run game and kind of open things up for Connor.
Definitely.
If we ever get to a point in the season where you want to do like a top 5 or top 10 wide receiver list, I think DeAndre is still top 5 personally.
Oh yeah.
Just hope he's not rusty. And that's why I took the risk drafting him in fantasy, because you never know what he can bring. So
I just drafted Odell Beckham out of the free agent wire because I think he's going to get picked up soon.
Hey, let's keep it going there. Final matchup to discuss. The Bengals and Ravens on Sunday night. Play a real thriller. Ravens with blunt force football. Take it. Justin Tucker continuing to prove why he's the best kicker in the league. And Bengals are 2-3 now. So what's more apparent here, to talk about the Ravens winning another one, They're 3-2, but I do think the record shows that they're a better team. Or the Bengals at 2-3 again suffer from that Super Bowl hangover and clearly having problems with the offensive line. And T. Higgins not showing up whatsoever is bad. And Jamar Chase wasn't as impressive as he usually is either. But again, that just shows this very good Ravens defensive team that should be accounted for.
Yeah, Matt, no, you hit on it right there. I thought that the biggest takeaway from this game was just the Baltimore's ability on defense. They had a huge 3rd and 4th and goal stop by Marcus Peters. I think he showed up late in the game and was tremendous. But they got 3 sacks on Burrow, which shows that they can still get home with the pressure that they do have. Yeah, I mean, Justin Tucker was unbelievable because he's the best kicker in football. And Mark Andrews also had a tremendous bounce back game, being silent the past 2 weeks with his production. But, again, the one looming question with this contract with Lamar is like, you had a wide open 4th down bomb to open up this game, and he just blatantly missed him and missed his receiver. And I hate, resorting a game to one play, but looking back, like, wow, Baltimore won that game. There's a lot to be desired with Lamar and how they're going to resolve this passing game, because I still think that there's so much left that they could really take to the next level if they want to make a deep playoff run.
I'm gonna spend less time talking about the Ravens here and more talk about the Bengals. I think just really quick on the Ravens. I think that the Ravens are not doing enough as an organization to surround Lamar Jackson with better assets. Mark Andrews is like either the 2nd or 3rd best tight end in the league, in my opinion. But the running back situation has been shaky, a lot of injuries going on in the backfield. And the receiving core has never been great. In fact, besides like one year that Steve Smith was there, like at the end of his career, I can't think of a good Ravens wide receiver ever. Like the entire time that I've watched Ravens, like the Ravens be in existence over this entire century.
Not since like Anquan Brown. That's a long time
ago.
Anquan Bolden, yeah.
Sorry, Anquan Bolden, yeah.
But even he was like the back half of his career after leaving Arizona. But like it just like I just do not see the Ravens fully investing into a person that they're about to give a $200 million contract to. Like if you're going to invest in this quarterback, get him some damn receivers. But I'm just going to move on from that. The Ravens also have issues on defense, which looked a lot better this, like last night or on Sunday night. So like hopefully they'll be able to string some good things together. But for the Bengals, everyone knows about the Super Bowl hangover curse. Like the team that loses the Super Bowl ends up being terrible the next year. I'm looking at their schedule right now. Their next 6 games are all teams that they can and probably should beat. Like they should go on a 6-game winning streak. They're facing the Saints, Falcons, Browns, Panthers, Steelers, and Titans. Now, you could make arguments that they could lose some of those games, but I think they're good enough to where they should win all 6 of them. So I think we're about to find out very quickly what kind of season the Bengals are about to have, especially this upcoming week. If you lose at the Saints and go 2-4, like I there's a lot of questions going to be asked of the coaching staff, honestly, because there's too much talent on this Bengals team. Yes, their offensive line isn't protecting Joe Burrow enough, but damn, like if your offensive line is that suspect, the head coach has to be able to step in and game plan around that. Yeah. Quicker passes, screens, draws. I mean, just do something to get around that problem. I mean, defensively, they're not giving up that many points. I mean, when I'm looking at it here, they gave up 23, 17, 12, 15, and 17. Those are good numbers. The Bengals have a solid defense. This really comes down to coaching and the offensive line. I think if the Bengals don't turn it around soon, I'm considering maybe moving on from that head coach because, truthfully speaking, this is the NFL and it might not be fair, but you got too much talent on that team for them to be underperforming like this.
Remember, under this coach too, that people really wanted him to get out until this previous Super Bowl year. And if we're going backwards with this, you might make a great point there, Desmond, and for what Zach Taylor can bring to this team. And he's clearly knows what it's like to be on the top without, just being so close to a Super Bowl, and then also being on the hot seat. And I think that's very telling and a good point there.
Can I, real quick, before we get off this topic, I want to push back a little bit, Desmond, on what you said about the Ravens not being able to equip Lamar with the requisite
Weapons.
Yeah, with the requisite weapons. Let me just push back, because I do agree with that sentiment that when you look at the assessment of the 4 years they've had him, they have not been able to successfully put enough pieces around him in the passing game to designate that. And obviously they were destroyed with injuries with their running back core last year. But can you make an argument in defense of Lamar in giving him $200 million if you're not going to be a pass first offense? Because that's my concern, is that you can pay him that money, but just know that you're not going to have a pass first offense. You're going to be a run first offense.
I think there are so many talented wide receivers in this day and age coming out of college that the correct front office can scout the right players, and the correct coaching staff can put them in the right position. So I lay this at the front office on that respect. And to your other question about should you invest that much money, you kind of have to. This league is predicated on, do you have a quarterback or not? Being able to win without a quarterback is extremely rare. It's not that simple. And I don't even know how you could think to yourself, yeah, we can be competitive without a top tier quarterback. And Lamar has proven that he's a top tier quarterback. The only issue that I have with Lamar's game, I mean, you want him to be a better passer, and I think he has been year over year, but he takes too many hits, unnecessarily. Sometimes you're in the pocket collapses, you get hit. That's not on you. But I mean, as you're scrambling, he needs to get better about sliding the way that Mahomes does, the way that Russell Wilson can do. He needs to do that. If you have to send him to Baltimore Orioles camp and have him just play baseball for a month, do what you got to do.
That's why they brought RG3 in, because they wanted to reiterate and stress that factor last year when they were up to get him a contract. And I think that is a tremendous liability to the organization, that if he can't do that, or he has difficulty with his passing ability, it's really hard to rationalize a contract that large. But the only thing I would say to wrap this up with a fine bow is that I think that the easy way out, the easy off ramp for the Ravens as an organization, because I have a lot of respect for Ozzie Newsome in that front office, is that you could give him up to 2 years worth of franchise tags back to back to assess the situation, because I could easily make an argument just in the counter that he has not been able to live up and make the developments in the passing game that I would like to see as my starting franchise quarterback.
I got to say, I don't see a problem with what you're saying, but on the franchise tag point, that is one of the grossest things in any sports.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I truly believe that the fact the NFL the fact that the Players Association has allowed there to be a continuation of the franchise tag is just
of course. But
especially because you can use them multiple years.
Look how it worked out for Dallas, because they gave him the contract, and I'm sure they're regretting it every single day with the continuous injuries and the poor play that he's been giving them.
Listen, I mean, the quarterback situation's been dreadful since Aikman left Dallas, and I'm very happy about
it. You're speaking with your heart.
Yo, let's do our upsets, whimpers, and thrillers. First time with Desmond, as we said, picking 3 games off the schedule. Then you pick from there. First, the adjective. Who do you think will be an upset? Who do you think will be a thriller? Who do you think will be a whimper? And then you make your prediction off that. We'll start with Alex this week with that. Alex, tell me, who do you see being an upset this week?
Ooh, good one. Upset, I got Seattle going into Arizona, winning on the road. I think that Seattle has more resiliency with this offense than that we kind of talked about earlier. And I think that Arizona is a little bit of turmoil on the heels of a very debilitating loss. I think they're at a crossroads where they're going to shake things up in that organization. And I think for Seattle, they're playing with house money. They're going in loosey-goosey. We know that defense has had some issues in weeks past. I think that Seattle goes in and wins that one.
Yeah, right there. And Seattle is the 3-point underdogs with this. Okay, I'll hear that. For mine, and it's going to be a stretch, but I'll take the fan bias on this one. I think the Giants at plus 5.5 can defeat the Baltimore Ravens. And the reason why, I think one, games at home. I think that is a huge advantage for the Giants, the rowdy crowd. I think with those concerns about, I really think with the momentum going in, especially with the run game the Giants have been improving on with Saquon specifically, and the fact that I think I think that it's possible to get these weapons open. I think the Giants can continue their magic run. Now, it's going to be a stretch. I understand that. I want to be surprised if I'm wrong, but I'm just going with pure heart and faith in this one that they're going to pull off a close upset and defeat Baltimore. Desmond, tell me, what do you think is going to be the upset this week on your end?
I had one picked out, but now I'm seeing another one that I can't ignore, and I'm really confused as to what to do.
If you want to give both real quick, you could do that too.
All
Whatever
right.
your heart desires.
My gut, this is just gut. I can't go into the reasonings why for you here, but I think the Steelers have a real chance of beating the Buccaneers.
Really, at plus eight even.
Yeah, I feel like Tomlin is a little too proud to get beat down like that, and I think the Bucs have a shaky offense. I think they've proven that week over week. Brady is struggling. Their offensive line is struggling. They're just not that great right now. I think that the Steelers do have a good defense. I think they do have a good running back. They do have good receivers. It really is a quarterback issue for their whole team. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't, in the games in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has a great crowd. I think that Pittsburgh could pull an upset. Not that they will, but I like their chances. I'm also seeing this just right now. The Niners have a 5.5 point advantage over the Falcons, but it's in Atlanta. I don't know if you've ever seen this stat or not, but the stat where the West Coast team comes east for the 11 o'clock for the 1 o'clock start game. They have that 3 hour, body clock difference. The West Coast teams win like 20% of the time. And I think the Falcons offense,
science on this one.
I think the Falcons offense is legit. I know that they ran into the Bucs defense last week in Tampa. So they didn't look that great, but the Falcons have been looking great. Offensively, I think the 49ers struggle offensively. I like the Falcons' chances in that game. I really do.
All right, good stuff. Now let's talk about our whimpers. Alex, what games are going to suck this week? The one you're picking to suck this week.
Jacksonville at Indianapolis is going to be a turd. I have no intention of watching that game. It's going to be like Stevie Wonder and Helen Keller throwing bombs down the field. I'm all set.
Okay. With Indy as a 2-point favorite there. All right, for my whimper this week. Sorry, my note apps quickly decided to run right. Okay. I'm gonna go with this is just hilarious to me.
Take the easy one.
Well, I know the easy one is the Bears and Commanders, where the line is actually even, which is extremely rare. I mean, it's so bad that not even
Vegas just gave up.
So I'll let you go take that one. But I was actually going to pick the Broncos and Chargers, and the Chargers are 5-point favorites there. As you said, Chargers are very injury ridden. The Broncos are just literally turning one of the biggest jokes around the entire country. I think Russell Wilson, even with this injury-laden Chargers team, will not take advantage of it, and we're just going to see some messy football. So toss it off to you, Desmond. What do you think is going to be the whimper?
I mean, picking the Commanders and Bears feels too easy. Everyone knows it. Let me give us another one that I think is going to stink. Panthers and the Rams. I think that's a really good one. Panthers with a brand new quarterback having to travel across the country to Los Angeles. I think their offense is going to be inept. The Rams, for all their issues on offense, do have a good defense, and vice versa. The Rams still suck on offense and the Panthers have a good defense. And it wouldn't surprise me if you find out that there's more Panthers fans in the crowd than there are Rams fans, because that's Los Angeles for you, great sports town. So yeah, I think that game could be a dud.
Boy, and the Rams are favored by 10.5, and that just shows
I mean, we'll see.
That's a good pick. That's a good pick.
So I see a lot of thrillers on the schedule. I really think there are some very interesting matchups coming into it. So kick it off, Mr. Ranniello. Where do you see the thriller coming in your sense?
I'm going to take the easiest one. I'm sorry. Dallas Philly Sunday night is going to be a great game. I'm super excited to get a litmus test of where this division's at and how good Philadelphia is as well as Dallas. So I'm really excited for this game.
I think for me, I'm going to actually go with the Jets and Green Bay in a team where two franchises have so many question marks. No one really knows what these two teams are made of. And on this, a crucial week 6 for the entire season, I think after the Packers had such a bitter taste in their mouth losing to a Giants team like this, and I believe the line was around 6 to 8 points, which is, again, shows how much expectations were coming into this Packers team. And now that they have a Jets team who historically have been a team where if you need to get a win, where if you need to get momentum back, you play the Jets. But on the contrary, with the Jets having so much momentum with their two-game winning streak, it's going to be an interesting matchup of two teams that really need wins. And I think you'll get a lot of great football out of it in Lambeau Field. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yes.
And the spread is a 7 points even for Green Bay. So it is pretty steady for the Jets, but I do think the game might be a little closer than that. So maybe even take the Jets if you want to take the underdog if they keep it close for the spread.
Well, I guess since you guys left it for me, I'll just take it. Bills Chiefs.
Yeah.
In what should be the Sunday. I mean, like, I wish that the Eagles Cowboys was the Monday night game and the Bills Chiefs was the Sunday night game. Like, that's
early to flex.
That's how I would have, or yeah, I mean, but having the Broncos in prime time again is a joke. Yeah, the Bills Chiefs going to be a great game. The fact that it's not a prime time game is a travesty. I expect the Bills to win this game, but I also expect it to be competitive. I don't think the Chiefs get blown out here. I'm thinking somewhere along the lines of like 34-30, somewhere in that area. I think Mahomes will put up points because the Bills have the better defense, but their secondary shot right now. Micah Hyde being out for the year, got issues at corners being out. Yeah, I expect a high scoring back and forth game similar to what they did in the playoffs last year.
Definitely. I definitely hear you on that. All right, gentlemen. Pleasure. Real pleasure. So much we had a lot of fun having you on, Desmond. I'm excited to have you around for the rest of the season, and I'm sure Alex does. And Brian, when he comes back, thank you, Alex, for bringing the funk as per usual. And we have a really intriguing week 6 of stellar matchups all across the board. Can't wait to talk about it next week. Don't forget to check out Desmond Price as well as the Independent Thought on his podcast. Check out Alex Ranniello with the Going Places, and also his amazing work. And again, if you guys have anything else to plug, tell us what's good that I haven't said already.
Oh, nothing to plug, but I have ideas for future episodes. Maybe I'll tell you about after we hit the end button on this one.
Well, looking forward to it. I know this audience is too. All right.
Beautiful. I got art show coming down at the Lockwood Matthews Mansion Museum in Norwalk, Connecticut. And I have a solo show at New England Brewing Company down in Stafford as well. So
all right. Yeah, definitely let me know that Lockwood Mansion show.
Yes,
all right, gentlemen. I'll see you next week. Peace out.
Thank you, guys.
All right.